Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. My name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Lisa Ryan, who is a certified speaking professional, an award-winning speaker, and best-selling author of 11 books. She has also co-starred in 2 films with other experts, including Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul. In her day-to-day role, Lisa works with her clients to develop employee and client engagement initiatives and strategies that keep their top talent and best clients from becoming someone else's. Finally, full disclosure, Lisa will be one of the CSIA Executive Conference's keynote speakers. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit more about your career journey. How did you end up becoming a professional speaker of all things?
I have actually been speaking as part of my career since 1997. I spent years in the welding industry, and I was not only doing things like oxyacetylene safety seminars, but I was also their corporate computer trainer. So if you imagine what that was like in the late 90s with a sales force where the average age was 58, and I got to go and educate people who had never even turned on a computer why they should bring their laptop in the field for demonstrations instead of the 6-inch sales binder that they had been carrying with them. And then when I left the welding industry, I went into healthcare. And part of the way that I decided to build credibility for myself was to do a lot of continuing education programs. So I was able to take really boring topics, latex allergies, double gloving, occupational asthma, and hand hygiene, and make them interesting enough that I did more than 500 programs in the 7 years that I was there. And then when my medical sales position was eliminated via group conference call on October 12th, 2010, with 12 of us getting canned at the same time, I basically said, no company will ever do that to me again. And I started my business on that day, and I have been a full-time professional speaker ever since.
With that kind of a job, making it through the pandemic, if you're a public speaker and everything's closed down, how did you get through that?
I tell you, it was really difficult because on December 31st of 2019, I was going into 2020 with more business on the calendar that I had done in 2019. It was going to be my best year. And then I was speaking on March 3rd in the Bahamas, and a couple people couldn't make it. I don't know, some virus going around. And then I flew from the Bahamas to St. Petersburg, Florida, and a couple people couldn't make it, some corona thing. I don't know. The only thing I knew about it, it wasn't beer. And I said, I don't know what this thing is, but whatever it is, it should be done by April. I didn't realize that was going to be April of 2022. But every time the phone rang, because there was this hope that, maybe I could go to Tampa in May. Nope. Maybe I could go to Napa in June. Nope. So it was almost like your heart being ripped out of your chest, one ventricle at a time. It was really the hardest thing, but it also led to so much good. I've done a lot of virtual training. I still do full day, 4 to 6 hour virtual trainings. I have my podcast now that was a COVID-inspired podcast. I did a whole employee retention summit. And then when the meetings industry started coming back, 21 and 22 were just such fun years because people were so glad to be back. So there was this energy and this positivity of just being back and getting back to the human connection that we missed so much for those 2 years. So I think it brought us back to changing our priorities and seeing what's important and really appreciating the things that we do have.
Yes, so go ahead and let us know what the name of the podcast is.
My podcast is The Manufacturers Network. And I'm always looking for guests, shameless plug, but really looking at ways to help manufacturers, construction, the trades to do things better. And I like it because for me, it's kind of like firsthand research that I get to talk to people from all over the world doing really fun things and then promote them on my show, which comes out on Monday, #Manufacturing Monday.
Speaking of topics, what are some of the topics that you talk about professionally or when you're doing one of your gigs? And how did you come to get that expertise to share?
My programs really focus on workplace culture as far as keeping your top talent from becoming someone else's. And that's actually what I'm presenting at CSIA coming up. I have programs on generations in the workplace, which isn't as hot as it used to be when everybody was like trying to figure out millennials. It's like, for goodness sake, millennials are in their 40s, leave them alone. But now we have Gen Z who's coming in and they're a lot different. I have programs on onboarding strategies because in today's market, it's hard enough to find good employees that it's really important that you start from day one to onboard them correctly so that you can keep them. And then my company is Grategy, which is gratitude strategies. All of my programs have that underlying focus on the power of gratitude and appreciation and how that works, not only in the workplace, but in your personal life as well.
You mentioned that you're talking to all kinds of different people from all over the world. So what can you tell me about the trends and challenges in industrial automation right now?
It's funny because actually the guy that I interviewed for my podcast today was talking about AI and machine learning and robots. And there's good news and bad news. I think that right now you cannot go online or do anything and not see somebody talking about ChatGPT or all of these other automation that's coming out. We have to set the foundation for doing it the right way. And then there's still that fear that people think, well, is this going to displace me? It's like, no, if you do it correctly, you can up-level the people that you have working for you. And with it being so hard to find labor to begin with, we can get rid of a lot of the grunt work, the painful, monotonous work. We can automate that and give people the opportunity to use the skills and the expertise and using their brain and feeling that they're actually accomplishing things. So it's really having those conversations with your existing workforce. Actually, the guy on my show today, I thought that it was brilliant because he was talking about the fact that when you have these employees who are great at what they do, they've been with you for 20, 30, sometimes 40 years, they're an expert in what they do. And you think about, what am I going to do when this person leaves? Because at some point, there's no choice. They're not going to be with you. But how they worded it is they're working with him to get involved with their AI processes, but it's his legacy. They're taking everything he's been doing for, again, those tenured employees and working that into the system so he doesn't have to feel that he's going to be replaced by a robot. Basically, the robot is part of him. And I just thought that that was such a brilliant way to have the conversation because employees want to feel that they are part of something bigger than they are. And when they can be part of something that's literally going to last for eons into the future because of what they helped to build, that's pretty significant.
While the solutions to every challenge facing the industry today are not always clear, one thing is certain. A successful business must be bold as it tackles these changing times head on. The CSIA 2023 Executive Conference is just the place to be to explore these changes, opportunities, and solutions. With a carefully curated educational agenda, formal and informal networking opportunities, and an expo to showcase the latest innovations, the conference is built to bring you the resources you need to succeed. Plus, this year, CSIA is putting extra emphasis on bringing you 4 highly rated keynote speakers to ensure you walk away with actionable advice, thought-provoking ideas, and an energized attitude. And best of all, you'll do it in the iconic city of New Orleans. For more information, visit www.controlassist.org/conference 2023. See you May 15th through the 19th in the Big Easy. What's unique about how you approach a project or challenge?
I think that it's really the opportunity to use a lot of creativity in the thinking of not having anything that's not on the table. Really encouraging and empowering leaders to come up with unique solutions and basically asking questions that they never thought they'd have to ask. I mean, I think the pandemic was great for that because I look at myself, like we just talked about, never in a million years would I have asked myself the question, gee, I wonder what would happen if the meetings industry disappeared overnight. So it just gives us the opportunity to explore things that we don't believe would ever happen, but potentially could. And management being open because your employees, especially the younger ones, are digital natives and they see the world differently. Technology has become so much more intuitive and easy to use, but we may not be willing to accept that as much as our younger workers. So it's just listening, it's being creative, it's looking for alternative solutions and getting out of that, well, we've always done it that way mentality.
What is a mistake that you made and what did you learn from it?
I think that we make mistakes, but when we look back on them, we find out that they really weren't. For me, I guess in high school, I never thought about college. I didn't know anyone that was going to college. Neither of my parents had a college. It literally never crossed my mind when I was in high school. And then I started working for an executive search firm and basically started saying, people with degrees make more money than people without them. So I should go to college. And 14 years later, I have my MBA. But it was going to school, working all day, and going to school Tuesday and Thursday nights from 6 to 8 and 8 to 10. The reasons I didn't go to school on Wednesdays is because, Dynasty was on Wednesdays and I had my priorities.
Priorities, yeah, for sure.
I sometimes wonder how my life would have been different if I had been more aware of college and I had been paying more attention, because I was always good in school. I just didn't know that there was that additional opportunity for me to pursue it.
That's so interesting because it really speaks to this idea that your environment influences so much of your life. Where I grew up, everybody went to college and there was just no question. But to hear your side of things where it was complete opposite. And now we're to the point where we feel like we've overemphasized it. We're trying to correct that by reminding kids that there are other opportunities outside of college for those who maybe are more technical or mechanical or what have you, that there are other opportunities because we've overcorrected on the other way.
And I think that that's part of the conversation that I have, because it was colleges and either you go to college or you're going to be some loser. And it's like, no, there are so many great, fantastic jobs out there that you can make a great living with great benefits and that you can have work-life balance, because at the end of the day, at the end of your shift, you go home. I think that changing the conversation and really get involved with bringing more women into manufacturing, because when I was in the welding industry, it was literally everything your mother ever warned you about. It was dark, dirty, dangerous. There was girly posters on all the walls. It was filthy. And now when I go in these plant tours, I mean, it's clean, it's bright, there's automation. It's like a cool environment that when we can change that conversation and attract more people. This year or last year too, I've spoken at more women in events, women in material handling, women in manufacturing, women in HVAC, because there's this need for connection that when we can start with the women that we already have involved in our organization and expand their reach and let them know that they're not alone, that's how we start to find the people who are missing from industry.
makes you optimistic about the future of industrial automation?
There's so much of just being able, the productivity changes that we're seeing. I had on my podcast one person, and the way that they figured out how to automate is they asked their employees what was the job that they hated doing the most. And they started there. So we can get rid of the routine tasks. We can free up human workers to focus on more creative and innovative tasks that really require their critical thinking and their problem solving skills instead of just their labor.
What was the job that they hated the most?
There was actually on the line, there was a casting that they had to basically pick up from the line. It weighed 20, 25 pounds, and they had to physically pick up that casting and move it, take it to another part of the plant. So you think about that, and that was kind of like, of course we can automate that. But until you actually ask your employees what's the worst part of their job, because sometimes you're afraid of the answer, having that open, honest conversation, and it also gives them the buy-in that they need to alleviate the fear that their job's going to be eliminated, but basically their job's going to be made better and easier, and they can focus on other things.
Tell me a little bit about what you will be talking about at the conference and what attendees can expect.
Well, we're really going to look at the Grategies or gratitude strategies to attract and retain your top talent and remain competitive in your industry. What are the things that you can do little by little to change the culture so that, again, you build a nice reputation? The good thing about it is that it doesn't take a lot of time or money, anything that we talk about. But the bad news is that your company culture took a long time to build, and it is not changing overnight. So it really takes that level of commitment in the different gratitude strategies that we'll be going through. I encourage my audience members to, pick one thing that you commit to over the long term. And sometimes that starts with the apology approach to say, you know what? I have not been letting you know how much I appreciate you and the excellent work you do around here. I'm going to do a better job of it. Because if I come into work and I go up to you, Lisa, and I say, hey, Lisa, thanks so much. Great job. And I have never thanked you in my life, you're going to be like, uh-oh, what does she want? Because you don't trust me. But if I come up and say, you know what? I'm so sorry. You're such an awesome worker. And I just haven't taken the time to let you know that. I'm going to make more of an effort. Now, in your mind, you're going to be saying, wow, it's on her. And there may actually be some accountability in there that now I'm making an effort, and there's vulnerability on my part that I'm letting you know that, I'm not all that in a bag of chips in everything that I do.
So continuing on that theme, what else can you share to the audience right now who maybe aren't able to attend the conference?
It's the little things. It's like letting your employees know that they're part of something bigger than they are. Sharing what is your mission. You are just not making instrumentation and automation. You are making people's lives easier. You're making quality go up. You're improving the lives of the customers. You're doing all of these things that are just letting employees know that they're a part of something bigger. I think one of my favorite examples, when I was speaking to the spring manufacturers industry, one of the audience participants talked about the fact that they take a spring, they put it on a poster, and they call it their part of the week, because they want their employees to know, no, you're just not sitting here making springs. You're making a component of life-saving hospital equipment, or you're making something for a 747, or on Thanksgiving, you're actually making the spring that pops up the turkey. So I think that there's ways to communicate your mission, to recognize excellence. There's so many times that when things are going really great, we celebrate. When things are going really poorly, we bring it to our staff's attention. But when things are just going along swimmingly like they should, we don't take the time to notice that, wow, things are just going as they should be, and realizing that. And then also investing in your employees, creating a learning environment. There's still a lot of that mentality that, oh, if I spend all that money in training my employees, you're just going to take all that knowledge and leave anyway. The thing is, they're not. Your employees are looking to be better tomorrow than they are today. And what if you decide not to invest in them and they stay with you? How helpful is that? So there's just little things, and there's so much access that you have to different resources and content to create that learning environment.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, tell the good people who you are and why you're here.
Sure. So my name is Brian Perozic, and I'm the Industrial Automation Segment Leader at Clayton McCurvey. And I'm here to talk about the upcoming one-day workshop that's going to be taking place the day prior to the start of the CSIA conference.
What's the name of the workshop and who are the presenters?
It's called Investing in Your Most Important Asset, Your Company, Building and Realizing Business Value. So I will be presenting along with Clint Bundy of the Bundy Group and Kathy Durham of the Capital Valuation Group.
So who would you recommend attends this event, and what can they expect to learn?
The workshop is really geared towards business owners and their leadership teams. It's really meant to help them understand the drivers that affect how prospective buyers would value their company. And by understanding that a bit better, we think that business owners will be able to learn how to use those drivers to strategically grow the value of their business.
Would you say this workshop is just for people who are planning their exit strategy?
No, absolutely not. And actually, it really makes sense for SIs of every stage of the business life cycle to start thinking about this. It's never too early to start thinking about the value of your business. I tend to use the example of Google Maps. You can't use an application like that unless you know where you want to go and where you're starting from. And then the app gives you the various alternatives. Do I want the fastest route, the most fuel efficient route, et cetera? The same applies to your business. It's really hard to build the right strategy if you don't know where you want to end up.
Brian, can I be honest with you?
Of course.
It sounds a little intimidating, is it? What can you say to people who might feel a little bit freaked out by all this stuff?
I understand that can be a very overwhelming topic, but that's really the beauty of this workshop. Kathy, Clint, and myself, we've worked closely with various CSIA members, and really understand this industry, what makes it unique, and the drivers that impact the value of your business. Our goal in this workshop is really to kind of bring that down to a level that you don't need to be a CPA or a certified valuation specialist or anything like that to understand. We're going to provide some examples and tools that are specific to the SI business and really put it in a format that participants will be able to utilize right away without any extra work.
All right, sign me up. Tell the people where they can go for more information.
Sure. They can visit www.controlsys.org/2023 Value Workshop.
Sounds good. See you there.
Can't wait.
So as you know, many of the listeners of this podcast are engineers, or I would call them engineer adjacent. And I'm sure for a lot of them, the thought of public speaking is just completely out of the question. What advice would you give for the layperson, maybe who had to make a presentation in front of their department or something like that?
I think that actually the best resource for public speaking is an organization called Toastmasters, toastmasters.org. They have clubs every day of the week, every hour of the day. And what that does is it gives you a safe space to practice your speaking, because it really is scary to begin with. I remember when I first joined Toastmasters in 1987, I was giving my first speech, and it was an icebreaker, so 4 to 6 minutes about the subject I know best, me. I shook for 30 minutes before that speech and for 45 minutes afterwards. And I still get nervous every single time I talk. And I'm okay with that because I know that I get nervous because I care. So investing in some time to improve the craft instead of basically practicing in front of an audience. Some of the best ways is to realize that you are speaking for a reason. You were asked to speak to convey information because somebody thought what you have to say is of value. When you can put it in story form, We're much more wired for stories. So take the facts and figures that you have and turn it into a story about how it helped somebody. Have fun with it. The more fun you are having, the more fun the audience will have. Like I was doing a public speaking course that I was training. And I had this one guy, Josh, in the program. When he was having coffee, he was like so fun and laughing and having a great time. And as soon as he got up to speak, he went into presentation mode and he got really serious. I was like, dude, where did the fun Josh go? Because the fun Josh is what people are interested in hearing. Like Maya Angelou said, people aren't going to remember what you said. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And when you can convey valuable information that makes a difference, you can have fun doing it, and you do it with a story or two, because that's what people are going to remember. Little by little, you can get more and more comfortable with it. It definitely is a fear that goes way back to the way that we were wired. Because if you think about it, when you are up in front, you have all eyes on you. And that basically takes us back to our fight or flight when we were going to be attacked by the saber-toothed tiger. So it's not just you, but going that extra step. And like I said, looking into Toastmasters or just giving yourself a break. Don't apologize when you get up in front of an audience and say, oh, I'm so nervous for being here. That's the worst, absolute worst way to start a talk, because it immediately takes away your credibility and people will think like, oh no, why am I going to be listening to this painful conversation? Take a deep breath before you go on. Say in your mind, I'm going to rock this, and go out and do exactly that.
But what about people who maybe even struggle to stand up and introduce themselves in front of anybody else, or even start a conversation, maybe at a party or networking event? Do you have any tips for those folks who public speaking, forget about it? They're just happy if they can make it through the cocktail hour.
I think that in those conversations, because I'm an extrovert, so it's a little foreign for me to, like, I walk into a room full of people I don't know and I say, wow, people who haven't heard my stories before, this is awesome. But think about the ways that you are comfortable and try to expand on that. So if you're going to a networking event, don't set a goal that I'm going to collect the cards of 20 people. You know what? I'm going to find one person who's standing on their own, introduce myself, and I'm going to meet one person. I'm going to make one new friend. And a lot of times too, if you're by yourself and you see somebody else who's by themselves, you know, the same thing, they're just kind of looking around, they're uncomfortable, to just go up and say, man, I don't know anybody here either. Do you? So a little bit of vulnerability, and then just, so what brings you here? And make it all about the other person, asking them about them. But I think that looking for ways to make a friend and go in it, that this isn't a networking, set a goal to meet one person that I didn't know before.
That's great advice, especially the part about making it all about them, and it takes the focus off of yourself, and maybe that lessens your nervousness if you were really thinking about, no, I'm really just going to focus on this other person, and it will make a really good connection, I think, to do that.
And you really want to, this is part of active listening, but instead of listening to respond, which a lot of us do, listen until that person is done speaking and then make a comment. And one of the best ways, here's a little tell, that person says, well, you know what? I just got back from going to vacation to Florida. You take that last word. Oh, you went to Florida? And they say, oh, yeah, we went on vacation. We went to Disney World and we had a lot of fun and we rode Space Mountain. Oh, Space Mountain? Yeah, it's one of my favorite rides. So you can basically take the last word or two that person says, turn it into a question. That person will talk to you all night long, and they will think you are the most brilliant conversationalist on the planet because you made it all about them.
Yeah, a lot of times I see people, somebody will share an anecdote and they will share an anecdote from their own life. Like, oh yeah, I had broccoli on Tuesday. Like, it's not really about listening. It's about, I'm going to contribute with stories about myself. So I love that tip about hearing that person and mimicking it back to them.
And even personally, I realized like I have a sister, and every time I did that, like she would say something like, oh, we're going on vacation to Florida. I'm like, oh my God, I love Florida. We just went there last week, and I turned it all about me because in my mind, I was trying to connect with her and share some similarities. She saw it that I was trying to one up her. So now what I do, and I recommend this highly, is that I will listen for her to share or to anybody to share like 3 things, like they'll say, I'm going to vacation in Florida. Oh, tell me more. Duh. Tell me more about that. Duh. Tell me more. And so after 3 things, then I will share one anecdote of my own, because it really does come across like I never thought about that before until somebody told me. It felt like I was always trying to one up that person, where in my mind, I was trying to build a connection by sharing a similar story.
Switching topics completely, if you had to choose a completely different career, what would you choose?
If I had any singing talent whatsoever, I would be a rock star.
Is it for the limo? Is it for the fame? Is it for the girls?
I love to sing. I absolutely love to sing, and I have a horrible voice to the point that this was several years ago, but my husband, we had the 80s station on, and I was singing at full blast every single song that came on. And my husband was finally like, do you ever stop? And the very next song that came on the radio, I did not know. And I'm like, holy cow, the 80s station is listening to you. No, I just really like music. I wish I was good at it. I'm just not.
Now we're at the point of the program where I'm going to ask you, what 3 books or podcasts would you recommend?
My favorite books, and this goes back years, probably Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It was written in 1937, but it really focuses on the power that we have in our mind to create what we want. The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, which was also written around that same time. And the funny thing about The Magic of Thinking Big is he actually talks about the thought that they're actually talking about building a tunnel from England to France, which obviously we know the tunnel has happened. Yeah. And then by Lynn Grabhorn, it's a book called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. It's really about the power of the thoughts that we put in our head, because in a lot of cases, we don't let anybody on the planet speak to us as badly as we speak to ourselves. So just by changing the conversation that we have in our own heads, and Lynn Grabhorn's book is a great way to do that.
Final question. What is the best advice you could give your younger self just getting started?
Well, I think that thankfully persistence is my superpower, but I would remind my younger self to just be patient and trust the process, because success doesn't happen overnight. To take risks, to try new things, not letting anybody or anything hold you back. And then with a single-minded focus to your goal. Like for me, for my speaking career, there was no plan B. There was not anything else that I wanted to do. So I did it until. I have just found that with that level of persistence, continuous action, and dedication to one thing, you can do exactly what you set your mind to do.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Lisa Ryan's keynote presentation at the CSIA Conference, you can visit www.controlsys.org/conference 2023. If you want to learn more about Lisa herself, visit lisaryanspeaks.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Lisa, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.